My 4-year-old wife cheated with my cousin to steal millions, but 4 months after we married, I secretly annulled it. And when I exposed them, she discovered she was never legally married to me. I'm 54 years old. I work in private equity investments, and what happened a few months ago still has me processing everything. Though the truth is, I feel more relieved than anything else. I guess I should feel bad about what I did, but I can't. And when I tell the whole story, you'll understand why. About 5 years ago, I lost my first wife. It was sudden, a brain aneurysm that nobody saw coming, and it left me alone with 2 teenage kids trying to figure out how to move forward. Sophie was 15 at the time, and Ethan was 13, and we basically had to rebuild our entire life from scratch. I spent the next few years focused on them, on work, on keeping everything running. Because that's what you do when your world falls apart, right? You get up and keep going because there's no other option. When I met Sophia, I was 49 and she was 24, and I know exactly what you're thinking because everyone thought the same thing. It was at a charity gala in Manhattan, one of those fancy things, where people donate money to feel good about themselves, and she was there in a blue dress that probably cost more than most people's monthly rent. She worked in public relations for a boutique firm, or so she told me, and she had this energy that made you feel like you were the most interesting person in the world when she talked to you. I'm not gonna lie, the attention flattered me, because after years of mourning and raising kids alone, feeling desired again was something I didn't even know I needed. We started dating, dinners at exclusive restaurants, weekend trips to the Hamptons, and she fit perfectly into my world in a way that made me think maybe the universe was giving me a second chance. The thing is, Sophia was incredibly good at being what I needed her to be. When my kids came to visit, she was attentive but not invasive. When I had business events, she shined as the perfect hostess, and when we were alone, she was passionate and fun in a way that made me forget the age difference. About 6 months into dating, I introduced her to my whole family, including my cousin Raymond, who was 39 at the time and had always been the charmer of the family, that guy who has 1,000 business ideas but can never hold down a steady job. Raymond and Sophia hit it off incredibly well from the start, which seemed great to me at the time because I wanted her to feel like part of the family, and he had this way of making everyone feel comfortable. Looking back, I should have seen it coming. But I guess when you're in love or whatever I thought I was feeling, you don't see the red flags until it's too late. About 8 months in, Raymond contacted me with this tech startup idea. Something about a platform that would connect investors with small businesses, and Sophia was the one who really pushed the idea. She'd tell me, "Patrick, you should help your cousin. He has so much potential. He just needs someone who believes in him." And like an idiot, I thought it was sweet that she cared about my family. I ended up investing $250,000 in his project, which basically evaporated in less than a year. But at the time, I didn't care much because money wasn't the issue. I had enough to live comfortably for several lifetimes. What I didn't know was that this was just the beginning of a much more elaborate plan. A year and a half into being together, I proposed. I did it big because that's how I am when I do things. I rented a yacht in the Mediterranean and filled it with white roses. There was a violinist and champagne that cost more per bottle than most people make in a week, and when I gave her the ring, a 4-carat diamond I designed specifically for her, she cried and said yes like 1,000 times. The wedding was 6 months later in the gardens of my Hamptons estate. We had like 200 guests, a full orchestra, and the catering was from one of the Michelin-starred restaurants in the city. Everyone said we were the perfect couple, that I looked younger and happier than I'd been in years, and I really believed I'd found something special again. But here comes the part nobody knows, the part that changed absolutely everything even though nobody realized it at the time. 4 months after the wedding, we had to travel to La Romana in the Dominican Republic for an investment conference. And while we were there, Sophia had to stay at the hotel because she wasn't feeling well, something with her stomach or whatever. I went to the conference and met this Dominican lawyer at a cocktail party. We were talking about real estate investments in the Caribbean, and somehow the conversation drifted to international marriage laws. I don't remember exactly how we got there, but he mentioned casually that marriage annulments in the Dominican Republic were relatively simple if processed correctly. I kept thinking about that. I don't know why exactly. Maybe it was intuition or just curiosity, but when I got back to the hotel that night, I couldn't get it out of my head. The next few days, I did something I've never told anyone. I hired that lawyer and processed an annulment of the marriage in the Dominican Republic, all completely legal and legitimate according to local laws. And I kept those documents in a safe deposit box in my office without telling Sophia or anyone else. I didn't do it because I suspected something specific at the time. I think it was more like insurance, a safety net that my instinct told me I needed to have. And it turns out that instinct was the best thing that ever happened to me. The next 3 years were like living in a bubble of luxury. We traveled all over the world: Paris, Tokyo, Dubai, always in first class or private jets when it made sense. Sophia redesigned the Manhattan penthouse, spending like $500,000 on Italian furniture and contemporary art. And I let her, because I thought we were building our home together. We had dinners with friends and family, where she was the perfect hostess. She remembered everyone's names, their wine preferences, their birthdays, and everyone told me how lucky I was to have found her. My kids, who were young adults by then, tolerated her more than loved her, but I chalked that up to nobody being able to replace their mother, which was fair. But about a year ago, things started changing subtly. Sophia started going out more with her friends, nights that extended until 3 or 4 in the morning, and when I asked her where she'd been, she'd just say, "At the club with the girls. I need my space, you know." And I understood that, or at least I thought I did, because she was young and I didn't want to be the controlling husband who made her feel trapped. She started being more physically distant too, always had a headache or was too tired, and when I tried to initiate deep conversations about our future or about having children, she'd change the subject or say, "We'll talk about that later. Right now I just want to enjoy." The first real blow came about 8 months ago. I was in my home office working late, and she was on the balcony talking on the phone with someone. She thought I couldn't hear her, but the window was cracked open. I heard her say, "He's so boring sometimes. He just talks about business and his investments, but he's stable and has money, so I guess it works for now." I froze there, sitting, feeling like I'd been punched in the stomach. Because one thing is knowing there are differences in a relationship, but another completely different thing is hearing your wife reduce you to your bank account. I didn't say anything to her that night or the following weeks. I just started observing more carefully, noticing things I'd ignored before. About 2 weeks after that, I saw her texting on her phone and smiling, in a way she hadn't smiled at me in months. When I asked who she was talking to, she got defensive immediately. "Just a friend. Why are you interrogating me?" And she made me feel like I was the problem for even asking. I started noticing that her phone was always face down, that she took it to the bathroom with her, that she had passwords on apps she didn't have before. One night she fell asleep on the couch watching TV, and her phone was unlocked next to her. And yes, I grabbed it and looked, because at that point I already knew something was wrong. I saw a message from someone saved as L that said, "Can't wait to see you tomorrow. Last week was incredible." And she'd responded with heart emojis and smiley faces. I didn't sleep at all that night. Just lay there in bed next to her thinking about all the lies, all the business trips I had where she stayed home saying she had things to do. All the nights she came home late, smelling like cologne that wasn't mine. The next day I acted completely normal, gave her a goodbye kiss when she left to supposedly have lunch with a friend, and went to my office to think about what to do. I didn't want to be reactive. I wanted to be strategic. Because if business has taught me anything, it's that emotion is the enemy of good decisions. The breaking point came about 6 months ago at a family dinner at Raymond's house. Yes, my cousin Raymond, the same one I'd helped financially. The same one Sophia had insisted so much that I support. We were all there, like 15 people between family and their partners, and I started noticing the way Sophia and Raymond interacted. It wasn't anything obvious, but when you've been married or thought you were married to someone for years, you know their intimate gestures. And she was using those same gestures with him. The way she touched his arm when she laughed, how she leaned toward him when she spoke, the way they looked at each other when they thought nobody was paying attention. I felt physically sick, sitting there at that table, eating the lamb my cousin's wife had prepared, making casual conversation, while inside I felt like my whole world was crumbling. That night, when we got home, I waited until Sophia fell asleep. And yes, I did something I technically shouldn't have done, but I didn't care about ethics at that point anymore. I took her phone, her fingerprint worked while she slept, and I spent the next 3 hours reading everything. There were messages with Raymond going back 2 years, talking about how much they hated having to tolerate me, how they were planning to wait until I changed my will to include her more substantially before asking for divorce, about hotel meetings they thought nobody would know about. But that wasn't the worst part. There were also messages with 3 other men, casual hookups she'd had when she was supposedly with her friends or at the spa. I found photos that made me want to vomit, conversations where she made fun of me, my age, how I was in bed, while telling these other guys exactly what they wanted to hear. I took screenshots of absolutely everything, saved them to my personal cloud and an external hard drive I hid in my office, and then put her phone back exactly where it was. I don't know how I managed to act normal the next few days. Go to work, have casual conversations, kiss her when she left. But I did, because I had a plan forming in my head, and I needed everything to go perfectly. I contacted my lawyers, showed them the evidence, and we started working on transferring assets, changing ownership structures, basically building a financial wall that Sophia couldn't climb, even with the best lawyer in the world. Over the next few weeks, I systematically removed her access to all shared accounts, transferred properties to my children's names or to trusts. I'd established, moved money to completely legal offshore accounts, and basically left only the monthly expense accounts with minimal access. She didn't notice anything at first because she kept using the credit cards normally, but I was monitoring every purchase, seeing exactly how she spent my money while betraying me. There were charges at hotels on days she told me she was home, charges at expensive lingerie stores I never saw her wear with me, charges at romantic restaurants where she obviously wasn't eating alone. The moment I was waiting for came about 3 months ago. Sophia tried to use the joint credit card at a luxury jewelry store, probably buying something for Raymond or one of her other guys, and the card was declined. She called me immediately furious. "Patrick, there's something wrong with the card. It says it has no funds, must be a bank error." I told her very calmly, "It's not an error." I closed that account, and I could feel her panic on the other end of the line. She started stammering about why I hadn't told her. What was she supposed to do? And I told her we'd talk when she got home. Stay calm. That night, I prepared everything perfectly. I had a folder with all the screenshots printed, bank statements showing suspicious expenses, text messages, everything organized chronologically like it was a business presentation. When she arrived, acting all innocent and confused, I put the folder on the dining room table and told her, "Sit down. We need to talk." I watched her open the first page and see her own text message to Raymond, telling him how much she loved him, and her face went completely white. She started stuttering. "Patrick, I can explain. It's not what you think." But I just kept turning pages, showing her more evidence, more messages, more documented lies. But here comes my favorite moment of this whole story. The moment I'd been waiting for and planning for months. When she finished trying to give pathetic excuses and started with the crocodile tears saying she loved me, that it had been a mistake, that we could go to therapy, I pulled out a different folder. This one contained the annulment documents from La Romana, all perfectly legal and certified. I told her very calmly, "The thing is, Sophia, that legally we were never married. I annulled our marriage 4 years ago in the Dominican Republic. So technically, you have no right to anything in a divorce because there's no divorce to process." You should have seen her face. It was like watching someone realize in real time that their master plan just exploded in their face. She started screaming that it couldn't be legal, that she'd sue, that I couldn't do that to her, and I just sat there completely calm, telling her, "My lawyers already verified everything. It's completely legal, and considering you committed fraud by presenting yourself as my legal wife when you weren't, you really wouldn't want to take this to court." I told her she had a week to get all her things out of the penthouse, that I legally owed her nothing, but that out of kindness I'd give her $10,000 to get settled somewhere else, and that if she tried to contact my children or any member of my family, I would make all the screenshots public. The next day, I went to Raymond's office unannounced. He was sitting there, probably, thinking he still had his little secret safe, and when he saw me arrive, his face showed first confusion and then fear when I closed the door behind me. I told him, "I know about you and Sophia. I know about the plan to get money from me. I know exactly what kind of person you are. And You can choose between disappearing from this family's life voluntarily, or I can make this very public and humiliating for you." He didn't yell or try to deny it, just sat there like a kid caught stealing cookies, and eventually said, "What do you want me to do?" I told him I didn't want to see him at any family event again, that I didn't want him contacting anyone in the family, and that if he complied with that, I wouldn't make public all the conversations where they talked about manipulating me. Sophia left the penthouse 3 days later. I literally watched everything packed in suitcases while she cried dramatically as if she were the victim in this situation. I'm not going to lie. Part of me felt something. I don't know if it was pity or just sadness for what could have been, but mostly I felt relief that this farce was finally over. I learned later from a mutual friend that she ended up staying in the guest room of a friend's apartment, working some part-time job, because it turns out without my money, her lifestyle wasn't exactly sustainable. But I wasn't done yet, because Raymond needed to be completely exposed to the family. I organized a family meeting at my Hamptons house about 2 months ago. Said it was to discuss the family trust and inheritance matters. Something boring that would make everyone come. When everyone was sitting there, like 20 people, including my kids who already knew everything because I'd told them first, I pulled out another presentation. I showed the whole family the screenshots, explained the complete scheme, how Raymond and Sophia had been planning this for years, how he'd used his family relationship with me to manipulate me, everything exposed, in brutal detail. The room went completely silent. You could hear a pin drop, and then chaos started. My aunt Raymond's mother started crying. My uncle was yelling, asking how his son could do something like this. My cousins were in shock. Raymond tried calling to defend himself, but nobody answered his calls. And when he finally showed up at his parents' house 2 days later trying to explain himself, his own father closed the door in his face. The family basically exiled him. He stopped being invited to dinners, birthdays, any events, and the last I heard he was working at some startup on the West Coast, trying to rebuild his life away from all of us. Now, several months later, I'm in a strange place emotionally. I don't regret anything I did. They dug their own graves and I simply gave them the shovels. But I also don't feel the satisfaction I thought I would. Mainly, I feel tired. Like I've run a marathon I never wanted to run. My kids have told me they're proud of how I handled everything, that they were glad I finally saw Sophia for what she really was. And I guess that's something. My daughter Sophie told me a few weeks ago, "Dad, we always knew she wasn't genuine, but we didn't know how to tell you without you thinking we were just being difficult." And that hurt because it meant I'd been blind for much longer than I thought. Do I feel good about having kept those annulment documents secret for years? Honestly, I don't know. There are days where I feel it was pure genius, and days where I wonder if it doesn't say something terrible about me that I was prepared for something like that from so early on. But in the end, it turned out to be the best thing I could have done, because without those documents, Sophia probably would have gotten millions in a divorce, despite being the unfaithful party, because that's how the laws work sometimes. Instead, she left with practically nothing, which is exactly what she deserved after years of lies. The penthouse is quieter now. I redesigned some areas to erase her presence, and I've been focusing on rebuilding relationships with friends and family I neglected during those years. I go out to dinner occasionally, but I'm not looking for anything serious. Honestly, I don't know if I can trust someone like that again, and I'm okay with that for now. My kids come over more often. We have Sunday dinners where it's just the three of us, and it's simple and honest in a way I hadn't experienced in years. Last week, I ran into Sophia at an art gallery in the meatpacking district, one of those awkward coincidences life throws at you. She looked good but different. Less polished than she used to be, wearing clothes that clearly weren't designer. We looked at each other for a second, and then she just turned around and left without saying anything. And I stood there feeling absolutely nothing. Not rage or sadness or satisfaction, just a neutral emptiness that I guess is the closest to closure I'm going to get. And that's fine. Honestly, because after all this mess, the only thing I really want is peace. And I finally have it.